Tyler Shough was incredible in his Louisville debut. The young running backs showed out, and the defense pitched a shutout against Austin Peay on Saturday. More on this postgame recap of the Locked On Louisville podcast.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this special Sunday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I want to take this time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your first order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. The Louisville Cardinals pitched a shutout against Austin Peay in the season opener, 62-0. Tyler Shough was incredible in his Cardinals debut. The young running backs showed out on the ground game, and the defense was nothing short of spectacular. A lot of stuff to discuss as it relates to this matchup, but I think that the first thing that we have to really get out of the way, and it's something that everyone knows, it's that Louisville was expected to win this game, and they were expected to win this game by a good amount of points. The spread was anywhere from about, I think it opened up around 34.5 or something like that, and it got as high as 40 points close to game time. So this was a matchup that the Cardinals were supposed to handle very easily, and they did just that. So handling business, you can check that box off the list. Now, as this relates to Tyler Shough's debut, I felt like what we were looking to see from him, he provided, and much more. The issue with playing a team that you're supposed to beat by a good amount is it brings this dilemma to the surface. And this isn't just a Louisville thing. This is sports in general. When you play a team that you are heavily favored to defeat, two things are true. Number one, you don't stand much to gain from it. And number two, you stand to lose everything from it if you allow it. Not much to gain and everything to lose. Because if you win the game the way that you're supposed to, then pretty much you just handle business. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, don't mistake that for me saying that this is not significant, because handling business gets you that win in the win column, and it sure as hell defeats the alternative, which is losing the game. So you have everything to lose. So meaning that if you struggle against this team, you don't look convincing, you beat them, but it's maybe not necessarily, from an emphatic standpoint, or dare I say you lose the game, then like I said, there's so much to lose from this and not much to gain. The only thing you can truly do in a matchup against an FCS team that you're supposed to beat by close to 40 points is to do just that. And Louisville did just that. So when we talk about these individual performances, yes, you have to take the level of competition into consideration 100%, no questions asked. Like, it limits the amount of significance, because ultimately, yes, in nature, these things are significant, but they can't be too significant because of the level of competition. So Tyler Shough going out there on Saturday against Austin Peay and looking fantastic for one quarter or one half a play, I should say, it's not going to mean that he's a Heisman candidate or that Louisville is automatically destined for the playoffs. But on the other hand, I think that he looked extremely comfortable. He looked really good leading this offense. He made some really solid throws, some really solid touch passes, made some plays on the run. We didn't really see him involved in many RPO situations, didn't really get out and move with his legs. I actually don't think he did at all. It seemed like Louisville was like, look, we need you healthy, and we can't reach our ceiling without you healthy. So Shough really didn't run against Austin Peay, nor did he really have to. The offense was fantastic all day long. Tyler was 18 of 24, 232 yards passing, and 4 touchdowns with 0 interceptions, 0 turnovers. It says he had 1 carry for negative 10 yards. That was the sack in the first half. Ultimately, everything that you were hoping to see from the Texas Tech transfer, you saw, and more. You wanted him to, number one, this is sort of the prerequisite. You wanted him to stay healthy, and he did. Thankfully, I mean, you wanted to make sure you keep him upright, and you did. You wanted him to ultimately make the throws that he should make, like the wide open guys. You're going to be able to create separation against Austin Peay, and they did. Ja'Cory Brooks did. Jaden Thompson, Jamari Johnson, Mark Redmond, the running backs. The list goes on. Louisville really did not have any trouble creating separation at the skill positions, and nor should they have. But Tyler Shough took what the defense gave him. He didn't really try to force too much. Like, that's one of the narratives around Shough, is that he takes a lot of risks, and as a result, it can lead to some turnovers or lead to spots where he just makes the wrong decision. And maybe this is sort of a byproduct of who they're playing, but you didn't really see Tyler Shough take too many risks. Like, the throws that he made downfield were really, really elegant throws. Most of the time, the player was wide open. Now, he did thread the needle in a couple situations, but overall, you wanted to see Tyler Shough make the throws that, let's call it how it is, he needed to make. Like the intermediate throws, being able to hit his receivers in stride, not throwing behind the players, and just putting it to where only his guys could get it. And I thought that he did a good job of that, all things considered. Like I said, you take the level of competition into consideration, but it beats the alternative. Like, Shough handling business still is significant in its own way. So he did what he needed to do. He stayed healthy, but it was more than that. Like, I don't know what you all were expecting from Tyler Shough, those that are listening to this from the Louisville fan base. I'm not sure what individually you were hoping to see from him, but I know that I was wanting to see him stay healthy. I was wanting to see him make the throws he needed to make and just lead the offense down the field. I figured that Louisville was going to run the ball more because they were going to be able to against Austin Peay. But I still wanted to see Tyler Shough be able to stretch the field like we were told he was going to be able to do. And he made some throws in this game that, I don't care who the competition is, just the fact that these throws were made and put in the windows that he put them in, gosh, he was throwing some absolute darts on the field against Austin Peay. Like, I go back and think about it. The throw to Ja'Cory Brooks in the end zone for his first touchdown was a good throw, right? It was a good throw. Brooks did a good amount of the legwork on that too. It was a good throw. There were a couple passes on the move where Shough sort of scrambled off to his left and he sort of dumped it off to his check down. Really smart decision. He even threw the ball away when he needed to, which was an issue with Jack Plummer, is that we felt as if Plummer held on to the ball too long, and his indecisiveness, resulted in him being sacked and not throwing the ball away. So Shough did throw the ball away, which was nice to see. But there were a couple throws. Like, I look at that throw to Jaden Thompson down the sideline in the second quarter where he basically puts the ball in between the high safety and the cornerback. And Jaden Thompson, he's pretty much running by himself, but you still have to put the ball on the money because there are players that are within range. But if you put it on the money, there's no contesting the throw. And Shough put the ball on the money. Thompson didn't even really slow down. He caught the ball in perfect stride, and that was his first touchdown of the season. The throw that I was completely blown away by was the end of the second quarter where Shough puts the ball into the back of the end zone where only Mark Redmond can get it. Like he threaded the needle and put it to where only Mark Redmond can get it on sort of that back shoulder route. And Redmond was able to get 1 foot inbounds. And shout out to Redmond for the concentration there, because that was not an easy play to make happen. But you make the throw to Redmond in the end zone, and there aren't that many quarterbacks in college football, I would venture to say, could make that throw. So to be able to see sort of some of that throwing prowess from Tyler Shough was awesome. And that's regardless of competition. That's just being able to make the throw. So Shough will now turn to look to continue that momentum in a game against Jacksonville State. The Gamecocks actually got beat pretty bad, 55-27 against Coastal Carolina at home, I should add. So we'll see what Shough is able to do there. Pierce Clarkson, Harrison Bailey. Bailey was 6 for 6, 35 yards. Clarkson 3 for 4 for 11. Really not much to discuss there. I felt like the second string offensive line at times didn't really help to keep them upright. But overall, they did their job. So Tyler Shough, the main storyline here. But he's not the only one that deserves the credit on offense. The young running backs showed out. And like the game against Murray State last year, who knows what that means for the rest of the season. But still, I was encouraged by the performances from a trio of the young running backs, and we'll discuss coming up here in the next segment of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot to stay alert to watch all of your favorite games, or if you've stayed up too late to see that intense overtime matchup, take a 5 Hour Energy shot in the morning so you can start your day on the right foot. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The website has flavors galore. My favorites are the grape and the berry. I like the tropical burst as well, but there is a flavor for everyone. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5, followed by ourenergy.com, and get 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th or on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. This code is not good on other subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Cardinal fans, I know that the season has already started. It's back. College football's back. But it's not too late to catch up before the season gets too far underway. SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, you can get it all from Locked On's stable of college experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football Podcast. Who has a chance to make the playoff? What team will cause chaos in their new conference? Everything you need to know all in one place. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the Locked On College Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Moving right on along in this post-game recap episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast, I know that the level of competition probably doesn't generate much excitement when you look at this performance as a whole. Sort of like how Louisville's game against Murray State was last year, right? But Louisville pitched a shutout. They scored a lot of points. So I don't care. I'll take the wins where we can get them, and I'll be excited where I can be. One of the main storylines outside of Tyler Shough having a great Louisville debut was the youth at running back showing out. I'll be honest, I thought that the Cardinals were going to see more from a couple of the other running backs like Don Chaney Jr. and Maurice Turner. Like Chaney, I don't even think he got a single carry. He caught a pass for 17 yards. Maurice Turner had 4 for 27. Most of that was from a 21-yard run early in the game. But those two, I think it's probably, you realize that you can succeed with the other running backs, so you let them get some experience, and I'm okay with that. These types of games are all for keeping your starters healthy and making sure you get some other players some good, valuable experience. The rushing attack was led by Isaac Brown, Duke Watson, and Keyjuan Brown. All three found the end zone in the season opener, and all three averaged over 7 yards per carry. Even considering the level of competition, I was encouraged and impressed by what I saw from all three. We begin with Isaac Brown, and Isaac Brown has been a player that I have been pushing an agenda for damn near 6 months. Like I've said, Isaac Brown is one of the fastest players, if not the fastest player on the team. He's going to be a star in the making. Jeff Brom's already compared him to the likes of Jawar Jordan. And just wait. When you see him play, it's going to make an extreme amount of sense. And we saw it. Yes, it's against Austin Peay. But, man, when he gets the ball, he can flat out fly. It's like when the handoff is given to him, he's like he gets shot out of a cannon. And you saw it on that breakoff touchdown run, or the breakaway touchdown run. If you let him get in the open space, I don't care what angle you have, there's a very real chance that you are not going to stop him. And that's what happened on his 77-yard touchdown run. Isaac Brown had 5 carries. So he really didn't have a huge amount of work. But he turned those 5 carries into 123 yards and a score. He also caught 1 pass for 9 yards. But overall, the potential was put on full display. And I mentioned he was one of the players, actually the first guy I mentioned, as the true freshman that I think is going to see a lot of meaningful snaps. And he did so. I thought that he ran extremely hard. The vision was there, and he showed that breakaway speed. And that's what I wanted to see from Isaac Brown. And he was perhaps the brightest star on the offense, who was not named Tyler Shough. The other freshman running back, I won't say surprised, but I'll say it. I was surprised. I was surprised to see him as much. I thought you would honestly see more Turner and Chaney early in the game, but Brom and company went to Isaac and Keyjuan Brown earlier. So we saw more of Duke Watson in the second half. He had 6 carries for 86 yards and 1 touchdown, averaged 14.3 yards per carry. Don't think he had a catch on the afternoon, but again, he had the touchdown carry early in the third quarter. I believe it was the third quarter, but yeah, it was the third quarter because Louisville didn't score a touchdown in the fourth. But it was nice to see the 6-foot receiver or 6-foot running back from Forsyth, Georgia, be able to see the field. I thought he had a Keyjuan Brown-esque game from Murray State last year, to where maybe you weren't expecting him to play, but after watching him play, you were encouraged by his vision in between the tackles. He put on his own display of speed, and I liked what I saw from Duke Watson too. And then Keyjuan Brown, a guy who I believe had been hurt a little bit in the preseason, but he got some run, had a game-high 9 carries, turned that into 65 yards and a touchdown, 7.2 yards per carry. Saw most of his work in the first half. And when his number was called, I thought that he's a really, really strong running back. Like, I feel like that's going to be his calling card, being 5'10", 210 pounds, utilizing that strength. But he also said, hey, I might not be as fast as Isaac Brown, but I've got some explosiveness too. Just watch. And I thought that he was able to shed a couple of initial tackle attempts and be able to get some yards after contact, which was really nice. But overall, this running backs room looked really, really good. And it was the young guys. It wasn't Turner or Chaney. It was the young guys that showed out against Austin Peay. And I think that still could be what we see moving forward against Jacksonville State, because I honestly, if what we saw from Jacksonville State in week 1 was more so what we're going to get versus the preseason hype, I think that they're probably going to be a better team than Austin Peay. But I do think that those 3 running backs could still factor into the equation. against the Gamecocks here coming up. 3:30 kickoff next Saturday at Cardinal Stadium. When we come back, we've got to talk about the defense. A shutout. They had a shutout last year against Duke. They had a shutout again this season. It was against Austin Peay, but one game, one shutout. Will Louisville ever allow a point to be scored in the 2024 season? We'll talk about the completely dominant, overall balanced defensive performance on the next segment of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Today's episode of the show also brought to you by Ultimate College Football HC. I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do. That is Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. From recruiting to hiring staff to overseeing camps and handling scholarship distribution, you control every crucial detail of the program. Here's what I really love about the game. You're responsible for calling offensive plays. Your strategy will not only determine the success of the season, but shape the future of your program. Ultimate College Football HC is completely free and has no ads, 100% playable offline. You can play on the go whenever and wherever you want. And of course, we have a special offer for your Locked On Louisville fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk as it will get your team off to a strong start. Download the app or download the game. Visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. And already into this final special Sunday episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast, recapping the season opening 62-0 victory over Austin Peay for the Louisville Cardinals. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. I would be doing this team a disservice if I didn't talk about how good the defense was. Now, let me make it very clear. We're not done recapping the game. We'll talk about the wide receivers on tomorrow's episode of the show as we sort of conclude the recap. But we got to talk about the defense as well. The defense, they had been talked about all offseason as being dominant in the spring and in fall camp, and it was going to be put on full display in this performance against Austin Peay. This is an offense that lost so much in the transfer portal as their head coach went elsewhere. They were depleted via the transfer portal. They lost guys to the graduation process. Needless to say, Louisville's defense should have dominated. And they did. They did not allow a single point. They recorded, I believe, 6 sacks, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the number. They had 6 sacks. 7 sacks. They had 14 tackles for loss. They had a pass deflection. They had a pick 6. They had a fumble. They didn't have a pick 6. They had an interception. They had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. And they overall, you look at the numbers that they allowed. Louisville, for reference, had 571 total yards of offense. Austin Peay had 106. 72 passing, 34 rushing. They were 4 of 15 on third down. They only had 9 first downs in the entire game. For lack of better terms, completely dominant. It was led by Ashton Gelati, who led the team with 4 total tackles. Like, there were, 57 tackles, and I would venture into saying over 20 players got a tackle. Gelati had a sack and 1.5 tackles for loss. D'Angelo Hutchison had 1.5 tackles for loss. TJ Capers, in his Louisville debut, being a big piece on the defense, he had an interception in that second quarter. Ramon Puryear had the scoop and score. He becomes the first player from Eastern High School in the city of Louisville to score for the university. And then you had some other solid performances. I was really impressed by 2 transfers in particular. Tremel Logan from South Florida looked really, really good. He had 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, Ultimately, the 6'4", 250-pound edge rusher was extremely explosive off the line, and he made some big-time plays, got after the quarterback, and made the Austin Peay offense pay. Also, Tamarian McDonald, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss early in the game against Austin Peay. In that first quarter, he had 2 key sacks. Play close to the line of scrimmage. The safety transfer from Tennessee didn't really play as much in center field as I had expected. He played more so closer to the line of scrimmage, almost kind of how like Gilbert Frierson played a little bit last season, the Miami transfer. But ultimately, there's not really one player that I can single out as being like the MVP of the defense, because it was just such a solid, balanced effort, as it should have been. I mean, you saw Quincy Riley look really good in coverage. You saw so many different players play. You saw Thor Griffith get a sack. Let's see. I feel like Thor had 1. Jared Dawson had a sack. Gelati had 1. Tramel Logan had 2. Tamarian McDonald had 2 as well. So ultimately, I felt like you did what you needed to do. You didn't have Jordan Gerard in this game, the Florida international transfer. I don't even think that Des Tell had a single tackle in this game. I'm not sure. Did he play? I think Des Tell played him. Just don't see him on the box score, so I'm just wanted to confirm that. But overall, you did what you needed to do. You handled business. One of the worst things I feel like that could have happened is if Austin Peay would have moved the ball down the field and maybe they put up 21 points. And I know it's not the end of the world. Like, you can't draw too large of conclusions during the season opener. You just can't. Even if it's not the greatest look optically, you can't just look at the season opener and be like, oh, well, that's going to be an indication of how this team is going to look for the rest of the season. No, that's not the case. But you don't have to worry about sort of spinning this from a positive standpoint, because nothing that Austin Peay did on Saturday you can look at as a discouraging factor for the Louisville Cardinals. Like, Louisville handled business tenfold all across the board, offense, defense, special teams. You did what you needed to do, and that is in the name of handling business, to the point to where you didn't really – basically you shut the door on Austin Peay before the opening kickoff, and that's the way that it needs to be. And that's the way – I mean, Louisville, you look at it, I mean, maybe they struggle with some in-conference opponents that aren't the greatest, but rarely ever do they lose or struggle with a mid-major FBS or an FCS opponent that they're supposed to beat handedly. Like, I know, like, over a decade ago, there was Florida International and then Marshall. And I know that back in, like, pre-2012, yes, that happened. But ever since Louisville joined the ACC, they don't really struggle with the teams out of conference, like in the mid-major FBS level and FCS, that they should beat handedly. So that is a blessing for sure. So, again, take the level of competition into consideration, but Louisville dominated on Saturday as they needed to, 62-0 against the Austin Peay Governors. We'll continue to recap this game on tomorrow's episode of the show as we sort of transition into starting to preview for Jacksonville State. We'll talk about the rest of the conference as a whole and much, much more coming up on this week's scheduled content of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Have a great continue to have a great Labor Day weekend. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.